Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Kickstarter Weekly. This is the first video that's fully focusing on June games, on games that are going to complete their funding in June. And I take it week by week, Monday through Sunday. That means this video focuses on the games that are completing their funding June 6th through the 12th, Monday the 6th through Sunday the 12th. Now, next week, I'll actually be coming with a double episode, and the reason for that is that I'm getting married on June 17th, so I'm not going to try to film a video right around my wedding, which means that next week's video will be a double video. It looks right now like the next 2 weeks are going to be lighter weeks at Kickstarter, which will be good. That way I'll be able to put out a double video that won't be huge and enormous right before I need to go and do wedding stuff. And then after the wedding, I'll be finishing my upstairs studio, and then I'll be focusing a lot more on teach and review type content. And later in the year, once I get the Twitch channel up and running, live streaming games as well. And those types of games will be anywhere from solo games to multiplayer Euros to campaign games. I'm very excited about all those kinds of changes. As we lead up to that, I'll be continuing to put out these Kickstarter weekly videos. Although if you're one of my regulars right now, one of my regular subscribers, let me know if these are videos that you want to see continue in the future. I'm a one-man operation, especially when you take into account the editing that I do on my video. A lot of bigger channels don't even do that. They just put out stream of consciousness videos so they don't have to bother with the editing. But I like to do the editing. I feel like it respects your time more and gives you concise information in a shorter period of time. So as I move forward and I'm producing more teach and review content, I will be trying to decide whether or not I should be continuing with these Kickstarter weekly updates. I look at them as sort of invaluable vlogs, and there are a lot of other content creators who I really admire, like Paul Grogan from Gaming Rules and John Gets Games, who do vlogs. But I have a feeling that these videos aren't gaining as much traction because I'm not putting out other videos. I think if I was putting out a lot of teach and reviews and things like that, I'd be building more of an audience, and then that audience would be already here for these videos. I just think that perhaps until I develop more of a following, these videos may not be as appealing to viewers who don't already know who I am. So I may put the Kickstarter Weekly on hiatus for a while as I launch into more teach and review content and get to share all of the games with you that I've been talking about, all the games that I've been backing and are coming in. So I'd like to shift the focus a little bit more towards those videos, both in terms of me presenting them gameplay-wise and just physically what they look like, and the nuts and bolts of teach videos as well as quantitative reviews, and eventually those live streams. So my guess is that until I become better known and have more followers, these Kickstarter weekly videos are to some degree falling on deaf ears, and there's just less of an audience for them. I think I may be better off reaching more people and doing a larger service for a larger number of gamers by focusing more on the teach and reviews. But this is just putting the question out to those of you who already are subscribers and are watching these videos on the semi-regular. Would you be okay with me putting more of a focus directly on the games and taking a hiatus from the Kickstarter weeklies until there's more of a demand for them again? Also to that end, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That is the best way to help me grow the channel right now. Okay, all of that said, I have 6 campaigns that I'd like to talk to you about that are going to be funding during this period. But before that, I'm going to talk to you about the 2 games that I played since the last video. One of those games is Bonfire, which is my 3rd play of Bonfire now. I'm actually expecting to play it again, possibly today with my fiancée Kristen at 2-player, and I'm going to get a solo game in soon as well. But I've played 1 game initially at 2-player. I loved it. The friend that I played with did not like it. And then I've played 2 games at 3 players, and both of those people, it was the same for both games, loved the game as well. I think Bonfire has become my favorite Stefan Feld game. There's a lot that you can do in the game, but there are definitely choices that can be made. It's impossible for you to complete all of your plans. So this becomes a game where you're trying to streamline your plans and focus on certain things as the game goes on. But in general, players will be getting certain tasks. They'll put them on their player boards. I think they can have up to 7 tasks. And then as they complete those tasks, they'll be able to flip them over. And then they'll be able to take one of their novice meeples, put them in a high council, and get bonuses. Now, throughout the game, they're going to be doing a lot of connected things to try to score points. They're going to be getting those tasks. They're going to be getting paths, which they'll need to put on their player board going from left to right. They'll get portals, which will go on their player board from right to left. Whenever they have matched a path, the color of a path, to a task that they have then completed, which becomes a bonfire, they'll score some points at the end of the game. They'll also score points when they have a portal in front of a completed task, a bonfire. But the biggest points that they'll get in the game are completing those tasks and then getting guardians to walk along the paths that they're building through the portals to the tasks on the farthest side of their player board. And to make all that happen, there's a lot that they have to do together. From the paths and the portals to moving their ships around the board, getting certain tasks, getting guardians to protect those tasks once they've become bonfires, obtaining the portals from the central bonfire wheel as long as bonus task tiles and resources. There's just a lot to coordinate in this game, and I like the crunch of it all. It's really fun to get halfway into the game and then have to adjust your plans to see what you're actually going to be able to complete. It's definitely a thinking puzzle. There's also a little mini game involved that's a little Tetris-y, because in order to complete various actions around the board, all kinds of different actions, you're going to need these action tiles. And at a certain point, you're going to run out. Once you do, you'll have to take little tiles from the right side of your board, put them on your player board, kind of fit them in Tetris style, and the way that you do that and the tiles adjacent to how you place will get you more of those action tiles. It's a great heavy Euro, probably my favorite game from Stefan Feldnau, my number 1 game of his, and I'm rating this one right now at a 9.0. That's stayed pretty consistent. It's very high up on my top games of 2020, and eventually I'll be getting to that list, and we'll see where it slots in and where it falls. But it's certainly, I don't see it going below a 9.0. It might go up to a 9.5, but somewhere in that 9 range. I'm really impressed by Bonfire. I'd recommend it to anyone who likes heavy Euros with lots of different mechanics to choose from and have to navigate simultaneously. I also played Praga Caput Regni this period. Now, this is a newer game, still a 2020 game. It's a game that I'm trying to get played for my best of 2020 list. So it is a newer game by Vladimir Suchy. He did Underwater Cities. He has a game that has just come out, so an even newer game than Praga Caput Regni, called Messina 1347, I think is the date on that. I do have that one on pre-order, and I'm looking forward to playing that one. But for me, right now, this is my newest Vladimir Suchy game. And I think it's kind of fitting that I played it during the same period as Bonfire, because it shares some similarities. In both of these games, you're going to be selecting or using a tile during your turn to choose the action that you're going to be taking that turn. And everything goes from there. In Bonfire, you're using these little action tiles that you've acquired, and spending one or multiple ones will allow you to do different things. In Praga Caput Regni, there is a wheel that spins, and you're going to select which tile you want from that wheel. If a tile manages to get far along the wheel, you may get victory points just from choosing the tile. If it's earlier on in the wheel, you may have to pay a penalty, a few coins, to take that tile. And then you'll get the bonus on the wheel that's associated with that tile, the tile itself, and you'll be able to choose from one of 2 actions on that tile. Now, what's happening in Praga Caput Regni is that players are building the city of Prague, and they're doing that in different ways. Sometimes they're building buildings, which will allow them to play a little mini game of area control. And sometimes they're trying to advance along different tracks. One of them is this road that runs along the city of Prague, and they'll get actions when they progress along that road, but they'll get a bonus action if they have an egg to spend every time they take a new step. Those eggs can be hard to come by. They're only available a few places on the wheel, so you'll need to be watching for those tiles, grabbing the tile associated with the egg action, and then getting that bonus egg, so that later on when they go to take that action on the road, they'll have that egg. Now, as they get to the end of the road, in the 4th and 5th slot along that road, they'll also get bonus tiles that will give them extra resources and even endgame scoring tiles. There are 2 other areas. One is called the Hunger Wall. Now, what happened historically is that some of the residents of the city of Prague were starving, and so they started to build this Hunger Wall where people who were helping build it were being paid in food. And it was a way just to make sure the citizens didn't starve to death and were fed. So players will be able to advance along this Hunger Wall as well as along a cathedral, it's a separate area, when they build buildings of different types, red and blue buildings. Building those 2 types will advance the player's tokens sideways along these boards so that they can score more multipliers for other tokens that they're going to get in the game. And then they'll be able to spend certain resources called windows to advance along those tracks upwards that will score them higher points at the end of the game. At the same time, players are going to be doing actions on their action board. They'll be able to upgrade those actions with upgrade tiles. It's something that they can build in addition to building buildings. They can also build walls. When they build walls, they will literally build those walls along the outside of their action wheels, and they'll be able to get bonuses from the way they connect them with each other. So just as with Bonfire, each player's turn is going to start with a tile, and the way that tile determines the actions that they take during the game. Also, like Bonfire, there's a lot of coordination with the different mechanical systems in the game, and while there are many ways to score points, as the game goes on, players will have to decide what's the most advantageous and expeditious way for them to score points based on the engine that they've kind of built up already. I really like games like both of these because they give you lots of things to do and you're not painted into a corner so much. So when your opponents are doing different things, you can react to that and choose to zig or zag and find other ways for you to score points if something that they do kind of cuts you off from one of the point scoring mechanisms that you thought you might be pursuing. Now, at this point in time, I'm also going to rate Praga Caput Regni a 9.0. I really, really like it. I need to play it more. I think there's a possibility this one may notch down a little bit to say an 8.5, but I'm not sure. It could stay at a 9.0 as well. I do think, though, I prefer Bonfire to Praga Caput Regni, although we're very much splitting hairs. They're both really, really good games, and for right now, I'm going to have them both rated at a 9.0. I'm also assuming that they will both be making my top 10 of 2020. They may both be making my top 5, but I think they definitely will both be making my top 10. 2 really, really good games from 2020. So the first campaign that I'm going to be talking to you about today is called Trailblazer, the John Muir Trail. This had a minimum required funding goal of $20,000. They're currently at $130,000, which is about 6.5 times that minimum required funding goal. Trailblazer is going to complete its funding on Tuesday, June 7th. This is a game for 1 to 4 players that plays in about 30 to 120 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at high. Now, Trailblazer is a lighter type of game that focuses on hiking and nature, and it reminds me a lot of Trekking the National Parks, which came out in 2014, and then Parks, which came out in 2016. Trekking the National Parks created a formula that Parks seemed to heavily borrow from, although Trekking the National Parks wasn't immediately that successful, whereas 2 years later, Parks was very successful. Trekking the National Parks then launched several other games like Trekking the World that used a similar formula but opened it up to things that weren't just park related. They had to do more with traveling the world, or even traveling through time and studying history. But it's a similar kind of formula in the way that the game works, and it's a similar theme, especially when you look at the first trekking game, Trekking the National Parks. And the mechanics that you're going to find in this one include things like hand management, point-to-point movement, set collection, and worker placement. It's designed by Dan R. Rice III, and the art is by Andrew Bosley, who is best known for Blood Bowl, Team Manager, the card game, Citadels, Everdell, Mission, Red Planet, 2nd Edition, and Tapestry. The publisher is called Mariposa Games. This is their first Kickstarter, their first published game. Campaign-wise, pledge-wise, this is a very simple one. There aren't add-ons, and there's only really one pledge level. There may be other pledge levels for things like just backing for support, the $1 pledge level that most campaigns have, as well as retailer and group pledge levels. But if you're an average consumer, an average backer, there's only one pledge level that you'll be considering backing at, and that is the $59 pledge level called Backpacker. Now that will get you the base game, the stretch goals, the Black Bear and Bluebird expansion, and a solo mode that has been designed by John D. Clare, who people probably best know for Mystic Vale. He's also designed games like Cubitos, Edge of Darkness, and Dead Reckoning. Continental US shipping on Trailblazer has been estimated at $12, and the game is going to be delivered in February of 2023. Next up is a game called The Breach, which had a minimum required funding goal of $108,000. They're currently at $428,000, which is about 4 times that minimum required funding goal. The Breach is going to complete its funding on Thursday, June 9th. It plays 1 to 4 players in about 60 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now, this is a hacking themed game with miniatures, which reminds me a little bit of the latest Chip Theory Games release called Burn Cycle. This game uses mechanics like hand management, set collection, and variable player powers. It's designed by Michelle Morosini. The art on the game is by 5 different artists, including Antonio De Luca, who's previously worked on Barrage, Dojo-kun, and Scene Tempore, Eleonora Lisi, Simone Murgia, who's worked on motion pictures Moving Out of Cardboard and Radetzky Milano 1888, Paolo Sippo, who's worked on Black Rose Wars, Dungeonology, The Expedition, and Nova Edis, and Giovanni Perrotta, who's worked on Black Rose Wars, Dungeonology, The Expedition, and Scene Tempore. It's being published by Ludus Magnus Studios. They're best known for Black Rose Wars, Dungeonology, The Expedition, and Scene Tempore. Now, this is, again, a relatively simple Kickstarter pledge-wise. There are 2 pledge levels. For $128, the pledge level Hacker, you'll be getting the core game and stretch goals. If you pledge at $171, the Titan level, you'll be adding in the Prometheus expansion. Now, there are also 4 add-ons. For $53, you can add on the Prometheus expansion as an add-on, and what that is a cooperative expansion. So otherwise, you'll be playing the game competitively, but if you use the Prometheus expansion, you'll be able to play the game cooperatively, working together. They also had an early bird expansion for players who backed, I believe, within the first 24 hours. It was called Sister versus Blinks. And you can get that as an add-on. If you didn't get it as a freebie, it's $16, Sister versus Blinks. For $31, you can add on Kabuki Nights. That is a 5th and 6th player expansion. And that's not available through either of the pledge levels, so if that's something that you want, you'll have to add it on. Finally, for $53, you can pledge Erebus. That is a team versus expansion, so it allows you to play against each other in teams. Again, that's not available in either of the 2 pledge levels, so if that's something you want, you'll have to add it on. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $39, and Ludus Magnus Studios is planning on delivering The Breach in July of 2023. From there, we go to a campaign called Kabuto, Sumo, Total Mayhem, and so much more. This is a campaign that had a minimum required funding goal of $20,000. They're currently at $436,000, which is 22 times that minimum required funding goal. This campaign has really blown up, I think, for what it is. And what it is, essentially, is 4 smaller expansions for games that already exist. So they've put Kabuto Sumo in the title. That's the expansion they're kind of advertising. But there really are 4 different expansions for 4 different games available through this campaign. Any one of them could have been the game listed above the title, or they could have had all of them. But I think they were trying to just streamline and simplify. So this campaign is going to complete its funding on Thursday, June 9th. Bites New Recipes is an expansion for the game Bites. It's a 2 to 5 player game that plays in about 20 minutes. Kabuto Sumo Total Mayhem is an expansion for the game Kabuto Sumo. That game plays 2 to 4 players in about 15 minutes. On Tour Paris and New York is a standalone sequel to On Tour, so you don't need the base game to play this one. It's not technically an expansion, it's a standalone sequel. It plays 1 to 8 players in about 20 minutes. And finally, QE Commodities is an expansion for QE. The base game plays 3 to 5 players in about 45 minutes, so it's the longest playing of all 4 of these games. All of the games on the list are light complexity, and we're setting the risk of the campaign at medium-high. Now, in terms of what each of these games is, Bites, the base game, is a commodity speculation and set collection game. It was actually made once previously. It was called Big Points. They rethemed it into Bites, where players are dealing with ants at a picnic, and the way that they're moving the various ants will affect the different values of the commodities. So it's a very light game. Players are trying to make their sets of things worth more by the end of the game based on the way that the ants move and the various foods that get more value by the end of the game. Kabuto Sumo is an action dexterity and slide push game where there are a bunch of wooden tokens on a platform, and players are trying to put more tokens on to push off their opponents. On Tour is a band-themed roll and write game where players are traveling around the United States on a 100-day tour with a band, and they're trying to cover as much ground and see as many things as they can during that tour. Finally, QE is a remake of a game produced once before, also called QE. The newer version does not have periods after the Q and E. So the first version was Q period, E period. The new version is just QE without periods. Both versions stand for quantitative easing. They have to do with banks being bailed out by the government. But what makes this commodity speculation and auction bidding game a little bit different is that while players are trying to affect the rates of things, they are not bound in their bidding by what they have. So they can wildly bid far beyond the resources that they actually have. And it makes the gameplay a little bit crazy and chaotic. But that's kind of also the hook of this one. Caden Laptard is working on Bites New Recipes. John Brieger is one of 3 designers working on Kabuto Sumo Total Mayhem. Previously, he's worked on Cartographer's Heroes, Chrono Corsairs, and The Refuge Terror from the Deep. Michael Dunsmore is also working on Kabuto Sumo Total Mayhem. Previously, he's worked on a game called We Need to Talk. The third and final designer on Kabuto Sumo Total Mayhem is Tony Miller. He's previously worked on Fire in the Library and the original Kabuto Sumo. The designer of On Tour Paris and New York is Alban Viard. He's previously worked on Clinic Deluxe Edition, Small City, and Tramways. And the final designer here is Jonathan Gilmore. He's the one that's working on QE Commodities, and he's previously worked on Dead of Winter, The Long Night, Dinosaur Island, and Wasteland Express Delivery Service. On the art front, we've got Luke Adams doing art on Bites New Recipes and QE Commodities. Anka Gavril is working on QE Commodities. Previously, she's worked on Bites, On Tour, and QE, all 3 of the base games. So she's been kind of a mainstay for BoardGameTables.com as a publisher. Gwen Caraval is working on Tour Paris and New York. And Kwanchai Maria is working on Kabuto Sumo Total Mayhem. He worked on the original Kabuto Sumo, as well as Cryptid, Dinosaur Island, In the Hall of the Mountain King, Sidereal Confluence, and Under Falling Skies. And the publisher here, BoardGameTables.com, is best known for Habitats, On Tour, and QE. Now, I usually don't mention the participation pledge level, the dollar pledge level. Here that's called a la carte. However, you may want to take advantage of that pledge level on this one because it will get you in, and then you can figure out in the pledge manager what games you want to back. There are several pledge levels that are big bundles that allow you to get a lot of games at once, but I believe in the pledge manager, you're going to be able to not only pledge for some of BoardGameTables.com's other games, but you'll be able to switch and swap games and add on things. So if you're confused and you don't want to do a huge pledge that's going to get you a big bundle of stuff, you could at least do the $1 pledge and then figure out what exactly you're going to back in the pledge manager. Now, apart from that, there are 3 main pledge levels in this campaign. For $89, you can pledge all the new stuff that's going to get you the 4 new expansions, or in the case of On Tour, it's not really an expansion, it's a standalone game, and then 4 promos, 1 for each of those games or expansions. For $199, the pledge called Everything! You're going to get all of that stuff, plus all 4 base games, and 2 previous expansions, 1 for Kabuto Sumo, called Insect All-Stars, and 1 for Bites, called Double Bites. Then for $249, you can pledge Everything! Plus board game bag, and that's going to get you all of that stuff, plus a board game bag. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at a very low price of $4, and that's even for the high pledge levels. And BoardGameTables.com is planning on delivering this campaign in December of 2022. Next up, we move to a game called Union Stockyards, which had a minimum required funding goal of $14,000. They're currently at $64,000, which is about 4.5 times that minimum required funding goal. This one is also going to complete its funding on Thursday, June 9th. It's a game for 2 to 5 players, plays in about 45 to 90 minutes. It has a medium light complexity, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at high. Now, this is a worker placement and commodity speculation game themed around the meatpacking industry in the late 1800s to early 1900s in the US. It's the time when there was the biggest boom in the meatpacking industry. It's designed by Dwayne Wolfe, who previously designed a game called Pedigree, and it has art by Andrew Bosley, who's worked on Blood Bowl Team Manager the card game, Citadels, Everdell, Mission, Red Planet 2nd Edition, and Tapestry. The game is being published by Solid Rock Games, which is Dwayne Wolfe's company. Previously, they published his game Pedigree. Now, there's only 1 pledge level for this campaign. It is $67. It's called Meat Packer, and that is going to get you the game and a Kickstarter exclusive Stockyards Gate miniature. The shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $18, and Solid Rock Games is planning on delivering Union Stockyards in February of 2023. From there, we come to Batman Gotham City Chronicles Season 3 and RPG. This is a campaign that started with a minimum required funding goal of $215,000. They're currently at $1.1 million, which is about 5 times that minimum required funding goal. This campaign is going to complete its funding on Friday, June 10th. Batman Gotham City Chronicles is a game for 2 to 4 players, plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low. Now, this has become a massive undertaking. There was a Season 1, which had 2 core boxes. They put out a Season 2, and as we get into it, you'll see what is in this Season 3. It has a lot of things that refine the experience and make it better. The game is not really that heavy in my opinion, but there's so much information, so much iconography that for newer players, it requires a really prohibitive download of information. There's just so much information. And people who played it, in the first season, even in the second season, talk about that experience having to go through rule books and look up rules to try to find everything in different places, taking more time than the game itself. So one of my favorite board game YouTubers out there, Paul Grogan, he runs a channel called Gaming Rules. He's been employed by them and been working to update the rule books over the last 2 years. There are new rule books in this campaign. There are all kinds of player aids and summary sheets and things like that. They actually comprise a whole expansion on their own, all of these additional guides and sheets and things. We'll get to that. I think that's going to go a long way towards making this game easier to access and not feel so complicated or heavy. It's not that the game itself is heavy, it's just that there is a lot of information involved, depending on how that information is presented. But essentially, in this game, you're playing Batman and the other Batman DC-related heroes. You're fighting against villains in scenarios. There are a lot of scenarios, especially across all 3 seasons of the game, and they tend to be for different player counts. So there's some scenarios that will play with 2 players, some with 4. Another thing that's happened in the game before, it's always been a one versus many. So you've always had to have one player playing the bad guys with this thing called the river that Monolith uses, where you slot in all of the bad tiles into this tableau, and then the player playing those villains controls them versus a mechanism with this tableau called the river. One of the other things in this campaign is a way to play the game cooperatively and sort of automate that. So you will be able to play this game truly cooperative and not just 1v many. The game and the whole system has been designed by Frederick Henry. He's also worked on Conan, Timeline Events, and Timeline Inventions. For now, because there are a lot of artists involved in various ways, and it's a little hard to make sense who's involved on which and what thing, I'm just going to talk about the 4 artists that are credited back in the base game. So that's George Klorenko. He's worked on Conan, Mythic Battles, Pantheon, and the others. David Desmarais, or David Desmarais, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name, but he's worked on Claustrophobia 1643, Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, and Mythic Battles Pantheon, and then David Finch and Jim Lee. Now, those are 2 very prolific DC artists. Jim Lee was even an executive at DC for a long time, and David Finch is a very high-level artist who's done cover art as well as interior art. So some of their art is in the game as well as a lot of other artists as well. And the publisher, Monolith, is best known for Batman, Gotham City Chronicles, the base game, Conan, and Mythic Battles Pantheon. Now, one of the interesting things about this campaign is that they are giving you the ability to get all of the stuff from the previous 2 campaigns, Season 1 and 2, as well as this season, Season 3. But I think because the price tag is so high if you're going all in, and there's so much stuff, they haven't really listed the Season 1 and Season 2 stuff within this campaign, other than a pledge that will get you the 2 base game boxes from Season 1. So there's going to be more things available, but you're going to have to wait for the pledge manager if you want to do an all-in that includes everything made for this game to date. This campaign specifically is going to focus on the Season 3 stuff, the new stuff, as well as an RPG that uses a lot of the same characters in the world. Now, for $60 or the Gordon Pledge, you're going to be getting the RPG core book and the stretch goals. For $128, the board game all-in Season 3, you're going to be getting all of the new stuff. I'll talk about what each of those things is a little bit later when I talk about them as add-ons, but they are the Gotham City in Flames expansion, the Bat Computer Files expansion, Narrow Chronicles 2, a New Eden expansion, the Solo Cooperative expansion, the Anarchy miniature, and the Kickstarter exclusive Batman Who Laughs miniature. For $135, which is the board game core boxes pledge, you're going to get both of the 2 core boxes from Season 1 plus all of the stretch goals from that campaign. It's essentially an all-in for Season 1 only. However, you will still get the Batman Who Laughs miniature. You'll get that miniature with any pledge level that you pledge that's for board game stuff. Not the RPG stuff, but the board game stuff. For $161, you can pledge the Batman Family Pledge, and that's essentially the all-in for the role-playing game. So you'll still be getting the core RPG book and the stretch goals the same as that $60 pledge, but then you're going to get a lot of other RPG stuff as well. You'll get the RPG Adventure book, the RPG Gotham City Guide, and the RPG GM screen. And again, I'll talk about specifically what those items are and what they do in the add-on section. Lastly, we've got two different bundle pledges with some kind of curious pricing. So the first is $268, the Riddler pledge, and that's going to combine the Batman Family Pledge, all of the RPG stuff, with the pledge for the base game Season 1 board game stuff. For $289, which is the Freeze pledge, you're going to combine all of the Batman Family RPG stuff with the all-in Season 3, all the new stuff. Now, the interesting thing here is that if you're looking at the core boxes and the Season 3 all-in by themselves, the core box pledge is actually $7 more. Here, they designed two bundles, and they've put that core box stuff in with all of the RPG stuff, and they've priced it $21 less than the Season 3 stuff. So that's like a $28 difference. Essentially, what they've done is if you're buying all the RPG stuff, the Batman Family Pledge, and all of the new Season 3 board game things, the Freeze Pledge is exactly adding those two pledges together. But if you're getting the Riddler Pledge, all of the RPG stuff combined with the Season 1 stuff, you're getting a further discount. You're getting like a $28 discount than what it would be if you added those two pledges together. Now, as far as add-ons go, it starts with 3 different sets of engraved RPG dice. They're each $16. You're probably only going to get one set. They're different colors, so you can pick the color combination that you like. Each set comes with 9 dice. Now, any good D&D player will tell you that D&D dice come with 6 different dice: 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 20. So why are there 9 dice? Well, you're going to get 2 6-sided dice, 2 8-sided dice, and 2 20-sided dice for a total of 9 dice in each of those 3 sets, which are $16 each. For $25, you can get a Game Master screen. Again, this is for the RPG. There are 2 different screens to choose from. They have different art on them. They're by different artists. As an add-on, the RPG Core Book is $59. The RPG Adventures book is also $59, and that includes 8 additional scenarios. So 8 scenarios that are not in the core book. 3 of them are intended as one-offs. 5 of them can be played as a connected campaign. The RPG Gotham City Guide is also $59. That is basically all flavor text. So that's going to give you a lot of information about the city, flavor, backstory, but it's not going to have anything like the adventure book that you're going to be using for gameplay. Gotham City in Flames is the newest expansion and the big expansion of this campaign. It's actually the biggest expansion that they've made for Batman Gotham City Chronicles. It's $62 as an add-on. It's going to have 13 new missions, 4 new double-sided boards, and 25 new miniatures. Now, for $27, you can add on the Bat computer files. That's going to give you a whole new set of revised rulebooks, player aids, summary sheets, just a lot of things. Some of it's new, some of it's revisions that people may have been hopeful they'd have gotten for free, but it's too much paperweight, too much stuff. So they're getting it out to players. They have better, reworked, revised rulebooks, but they can't just offer that much volume of stuff for free, so it has to have a price tag on it. So they've paired it with all of these new player aids and summary sheets. Narrow Chronicles 2: A New Eden is priced at $14 as an add-on. They've done it once before, but this is a way that you can play villains and then take on certain missions playing as the villains. So there are 21 villain sheets with this. You can go in, you can play the other missions as villains. There's also 4 new adventures specifically for the villains. That solo cooperative mode that I mentioned is available as an add-on for $34. And again, this is the thing that is going to automate the game so that you can play it as solo or true co-op and not as a one versus many. Obviously, if you're trying to play it solo, you couldn't do that if it was a one versus many. You'd need to have at least 2 players in the game. So for people who got this game and they want to be able to play it solo, they can finally do that with this expansion. For $9, you can add on Anarchy, which is a new miniature, a new playable hero. And then there will be more stuff, mainly from Season 2, but they may be doing some things from Season 1 as well, so that you can pick and choose stuff and create various bundles. But that stuff will be available in the Pledge Manager. It's not all listed out here. Shipping in the continental US has 4 different estimates: $20, $36, $41, and $58. The way that those are divided, it's $20 shipping if you're just getting the core RPG book. If you're getting the Batman family with all of the RPG stuff, that's your $36 shipping. If you're backing for either all of the new board games, Season 3 stuff, or for the Season 1 core boxes with all of their stretch goals, that's your $41 shipping. And then the $58 estimated shipping is for either of the Riddler or Freeze pledges that combine both board game pledges and RPG stuff. And finally, Monolith is planning on delivering this new Batman Gotham City Chronicles season, plus the RPG, plus all of the previous stuff if you're pledging for that through this campaign in September of 2023. The final campaign of this video is called RuneScape Kingdoms: Shadow of Elvarg. This had a minimum required funding goal of $126,000. It's currently at $668,000, which is about 5.5 times that minimum required funding goal. RuneScape Kingdoms is also going to fund on Friday, June 10th. This is a game for 1 to 5 players, plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now, this game is themed after the RuneScape video game series. It's not really a dungeon crawler, though. It's more of a campaign boss battler. So you're really going to be focusing on the bosses more than doing a lot of dungeon crawling. It's got 4 different designers. Matt Hart has previously worked on Dark Souls, the board game, Guildhall, and Resident Evil 2, the board game. Sherwin Matthews has worked on Bardsung, Horizon Zero Dawn, the board game, and Resident Evil 2, the board game. Fraser McFetridge has worked on Bardsung, and Jamie Perkins has worked on Monster Hunter World, the board game. The art is by Doug Telford, who's previously worked on Bardsung, Godtear, and Guildhall, and the game is being published by Steamforged Games, who's previously worked on Dark Souls, the board game, Guildhall, and Resident Evil 2, the board game. For $82, you can pledge the core pledge. That's going to get you the base game, the stretch goals, and an expansion called the Culinaromancer expansion. If you pledge at $154, which is the gameplay all-in pledge, that's going to give you the base game, the stretch goals, the Culinaromancer expansion, and 3 additional gameplay expansions. They are the King Black Dragon expansion, the Calphite Queen expansion, and the Zuckle Nook expansion. If you pledge at $199, the deluxe all-in pledge, you'll get all of that stuff plus the deluxe expansion. That's going to include a big playmat, 4 neoprene boss playmats, upgraded wooden tokens, and metal coins. Now, if you want to pledge at a lower level and then get certain expansions as add-ons, each of those content expansions, the Black King Dragon, the Calphite Queen, and the Zuckle Nook expansion, those are each $32. The deluxe expansion is $51 as an add-on. Finally, depending on what pledge level you're pledging at, shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $25, $32, or $40, and Steamforged Games is planning on delivering RuneScape Kingdoms in November of 2023. So that wraps the 6 campaigns for the week. That brings us to the games that I personally pledged from last week's video. covered 3 different campaigns in last week's video. There was Anunnaki, Dawn of the Gods, The Flood, and the new Artemis Project campaign. I personally backed one of them. I backed Anunnaki, Dawn of the Gods. It's by designers that I really like, including Simone Luciani. It's a 4X game, which really appeals to me. I was a little worried because the publisher is Cranio Creations, and although Barrage is a fantastic game, they really bungled the delivery of that game. It took several attempts at delivering components, and they even had 1 or 2 additional campaigns trying to fix their mistakes. At the time, I thought I probably wouldn't back anything by Cranio Creations again, but here they are with a great looking game by a designer who I really like, and it seems to be much simpler in what they're offering. Barrage had a lot of different things you could get, and some of what they tried to do was ambitious and it didn't quite work out, but this is a lot more cohesive in terms of what they're offering. So I'm biting the bullet and I'm hoping that it's going to work out okay this time. If it doesn't, then I definitely won't back anything with them again, but I'm hoping that the game itself and lessons learned from that previous campaign will mean that this one is okay. So that wraps the video for this week. I'll be back next week with a double video, as I mentioned at the top, covering 2 weeks worth of campaigns. Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great week, play lots of great games, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.